Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Sure, yeah. So I'm Allison Pagano, and I created a body of work called Embodied Dance accidentally about 25, 6 years ago, and it's become my life's work. So currently, I lead online and in person teacher trainings using dance as a healing art and supporting people to reconnect to their body's truth, to their expression, to understand what they feel, to know what their power is, and to make choices from that place. Because I feel like we're living at obviously a time on the planet where disembodiment is a problem more than ever. So I feel very in my mission and on purpose around how to support humans staying human. And not only that, but thriving beyond what we are told we're capable of. Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. Oh, there goes one of my things. So I was actually here. So I'm based in Australia right now, and I was here back in the late '90s doing my undergraduate degree in cultural anthropology from New Jersey originally. So it was a long ways away coming over here, and I was in the middle of a very intense eating disorder. I mostly just didn't want to be in a body, didn't want to feel anything, and was kind of shrinking away from everything in life. I just kind of basically wanted to disappear and not deal with anything. That was brought out about losing a boyfriend in a car accident, and then I think my grandfather died the same week, and I was doing, 5, 6 courses at university at the time, and I was just mentally, emotionally maxed out. I had grief, all these things rising up. And previous to that, I think in my life, I had been in and out with food probably since I was 15, 16. I always had sort of this weird relationship. And something about that moment in time kicked off all of those things into a critical mass where it was just like, I don't know how to eat. I don't know how to any of this. I just don't want to do it. So, for whatever reason, even though I was going through this horrific thing and I had my friends doing interventions for me and I was going to nutritionists and nobody was really helping me, for some reason I decided to study abroad for a year in Australia in the middle of all of that, yeah. And I don't know, there was just something in me that knew that, yeah, that I had to kind of get out of my own way or I had to kind of find a new perspective on some level. And it kind of got worse before it got better, for sure. But the turning point for that was not too far from where I live now is a university called Southern Cross University, and I was studying there. I was studying what they called at the time Aboriginal Studies. They call it something different now. And I had an Indigenous woman teacher who was teaching a class called Spiritual Well-Being, which back in the late '90s, it was like, whoa, what's this? I was 20 something, 20 maybe. And she taught us about the energy body. She taught us transcendental meditation. She taught us all of these different things that I had never been exposed to. But I was always on more the spiritual side. Like I always felt deeply and kind of knew things and didn't know why. And she started to connect a lot of dots for me. And I deeply respected her, deeply trusted her. And she was someone who you could tell had been through hell and really also knew how to hold a big space for many things. So we had this assignment in class to bring forward our concept of the divine at 20 years old. What do right? So I didn't want to disappoint her, and I definitely knew that there was something in me that was being really activated by what I was learning in class. Started being able to put together kind of the whys of like, oh, this is why I'm hating myself right now. Oh, okay, I can kind of see these patterns playing out. It was giving myself greater context for those things. So our class was held in a dance studio, so I knew that I needed to show the class something through movement, and it scared the shit out of me. Sorry for cursing. I was terrified. Yeah, okay. I could drop a lot of F bombs, so I'll try to be ladylike. So, Yeah, yeah, thank you. So, I committed to exploring this through movement because I had started dancing, I don't know, maybe again when I was 15, 16, and I just knew that there was something in this for me. I had a very strong clarity of like, just do this and figure it out, Allison. Like, there's something in this for you. So I found this amazing piece of music, and I would go in the studio every day, and I was just committed to being in curiosity and being in my truth. And I didn't really know what that meant. But ultimately, what I found was as I was mapping these different things around what I could see I was experiencing and what she was mapping it to in, like, say, chakras, for example, like, oh, okay, I could see that, like, I'm really shut down here and my power center's, like, completely shut off. And just having these little pieces of information to hold on to, I started diving into, like, well, where do I think this is and what is going on here? And I would just be committed to feeling, even though that was the thing I was running away from. So my task was to try to give a truthful expression to what I could sense, that was stuck, that was unnameable, that was unspoken. And most of it I just didn't even have pictures or words for, but I would just try and touch the root of it and give it a movement. And I practiced that for probably a couple of months. And then I ended up bringing to the class this half choreographed, half improvised thing. And I got so involved that at one point I like sprained my ankle like coming out of a turn because I was all in a, yeah, I was in the passion of it. But there was something about sharing and being witnessed in that raw vulnerability, which was something that was very foreign to me. I was a deep, deep introvert, didn't really talk to anyone, very, very quiet. And to be so exposed like that in such a truthful way was like, what did I just do? And to feel that I was received by the class, I was seen, there was reflection coming back at me of what people experienced. Something in me after that started shifting a little bit. And it was just, I started having a different relationship with my body. First of all, I was having a relationship with my body. And I started realizing that I didn't want to hate life. I didn't want to, you know, spend my days just writing down every single piece of food that I ate and exercising for 4 or 5 hours. Like that wasn't, I just got really clear I didn't want to do that anymore. So it was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but this is feeling more like I've got some capacity to learn how to eat again now. Or I feel like I have some safety and some space to meet life in a different way and to know that there's a way through. So it just became a pivotal point, and I could say more about what happened after that in the years, but that's just the pinnacle of where it started. Mm, absolutely. Mm, mhm. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating because what I've learned, again, another thing that I didn't intend on becoming was working in the healing arts. I ended up doing hands-on healing for about 20 years of my life. You know, kind of following that, I went to school and studied with a lot of healers and started bringing through a lot of deep, what I'll call now maybe multidimensional healing. It sounds woo-woo, but it's really very practical and earthy. Anyway, um, through those deep healing processes, what I've learned over the years is a lot of the stuff that I was carrying was lineage pain. And mapping things and then having to learn later, like I was carrying this like my own, but it actually happened to my mom. That happened to my grandma, but I came in and I held this. And I guess my soul said, okay, I'm going to pick all that up and do something with it, as so many of us, I think, right now are that have come here to the planet, I think, at this time for this massive transition. That was something I wasn't expecting because it feels so much, I feel like we can take on so many things in our life that we have to feel it to the degree that it is ours to, to move it through, to transmute it, to transform it. So unlike the spiritual healing level, I'd say that was a big, big piece of it, of finding that my body and my lineage was all connected. Was not expecting that. Yeah, I mean, it was through a couple of little different things, but even on a very practical level, like I would share things with my mom, like like I've gone through this particular thing, or I'm having this physical thing in my body, and she would tell me, yes, this happened to me too. Or I had to find out later in life, the sexual abuse that went on. And also, I didn't find out until later, went through an eating disorder when she was younger. And there was just intense trauma. I mean, they all grew up poor in New York City in the early 1940s and 50s. So it wasn't something I ever intended on investigating, or, I wasn't aware enough to know. It was just like, God, I feel all of these things, and having conversations with her after having moved through different experiences with them. Um, yeah, right. Absolutely. Mm, mm. Right. Well, this is a great question, and when I work with students and I work with clients, I always bring it back to their own experience, and I always bring it back to what's present and alive in the moment, because the body never lies. The one thing I have studied a lot in body language is, I mean, in healing is body language, and the funny thing about body language is that no matter what a person's saying, their body is always telling the truth. So when you can come to learn to trust what is being moved or expressed, it's pretty intense and powerful. But to go back a few notches with that, um, around how do you know where to meet it in the body? You have to be, I want to say, courageous, and you have to be curious, and I want to say compassionately curious about what is really happening. And I think without courage and without curiosity, it's kind of hard to get started. You have to also want to kind of figure out that what's happening right now. You know that pathway forward. You know the control thing. You know the perfection thing. That you know that so well, and you know how it ends, and you know how it goes every time. So there's something in being curious of, could this be different for me? Is this a life sentence, or is there something else? So when I'm working with people in the body, it will often be, we will name whatever it is, if it's the perfectionism, if it's the control. For me, it was control. I felt out of control about life. People around me are dying. All of this is happening. I better control what I can. And so we would dive into that and say, okay, this idea of control, and we would kind of bring the mental and the emotional into it. I'd let somebody dialogue about it. What are the feelings about it? Okay, we'll kind of get something going. And then once they feel safe and we're in a connection flow about it, it's where does that feel activated in your body? And it's like, oh yeah, my stomach's tightening up, or like my throat's getting a little closed, and my shoulders blades are tightening up a little bit. And there's always some form of activation that you can feel. So we follow that like a thread. And we get very curious about, well, how would you describe it? And, you know, a lot of people would map some of this to, I guess, there's a field called somatic experiencing. And I would say that my work has a similar tone, except I bring it through to dance. So we actually express, we, you know, we express the fullness of the root cause, and we bring a new imprint in. And there's reasons why we do all those things because it's neuro. Sure. Yes. Hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. So I just work with whatever the person can touch. And I realized that the nervous system is a beautiful thing because in this process that I've been working with people for over 2 decades, the body has never brought anyone to a place where they said, that was too much, I'm re traumatized, I can't handle it. The body just brings up in the moment what you are ready to see, acknowledge, or move through. And it's because of the way that we do it. It's like, well, what do you actually feel? Okay, I feel this. Okay, how is that? Oh, yeah, it's okay. And you kind of just follow the breadcrumbs with it. It's uncomfortable, but it doesn't kill you. So when you get curious about it and you start feeling the activation of it, there's a whole lot of different tones to what I do inside the embodied dance work, but ultimately we get to a place of how does that need to move to be fully expressed? If you're going to touch it, so we kind of touch into the root. It's connected to this memory, emotion, time, whatever it was, whatever the person needed that they didn't, the needs that they didn't have met, the meaning that they made about what happened. This happened, so it means I'm not worthy. This happened, and it means that I won't be loved for who I am. So we kind of touch into the core beliefs as well, and how the core beliefs are already operating and how they're making you feel. And we just get really curious and we hold that core belief and we hold with a lot of compassion for what that person went through. So it's bringing a lot of witness and um, care to it. And it's giving them the opportunity to say, what about that is now ready to move? What was there that was never expressed? Sometimes there's anger, sometimes there's grief, sometimes there's, you know, a whole variety of emotional intensities or on lesser and greater scales. And it's just giving the person access to that and saying, okay, there's something here that you can clear off some dust with, and let's do this together. So it's just holding a little flashlight on what it is and how it can move. And once they do that, it's like, okay, there's some more space now. That throat piece or that tummy piece is sort of like settling a little bit. And I really align with that nature abhors a vacuum saying. So it's like, well, now there's this space. So what are we going to, what do you intend and what do you choose? What would you most like to bring forward from this if you're going to create a new imprint into what that was? So maybe the intention is I want to take better care of my heart. I want to have better boundaries around this particular thing. And it's like, okay, where do you feel that in the body? Well, I feel it here. How does that want to move? And we start rewiring the body language around things that they never really thought that they could do. So it's around creating new movement qualities. And in that, there's a bit of an identity shift because I say that body language works in two ways. Like body language works from the mental, emotional to the physical. But when the physical actually does a different movement, it registers in the mental and the emotional. So it's a way of re-imprinting an old paradigm. And this is how, you know, the body of work I studied was the Collard method. And they talked about neuroplasticity and being able to rewire the brain through different movements once you've addressed the mental and emotional. So it's really the unified field of the whole person getting on board with the same thing. And that's what I see has created the most long-term healing in the people I've worked with. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the funny thing, do you need to say again? Do you need to know? It depends, it depends on the person and the story and what's there. And there's a couple of different processes. I kind of gave you a broad brushstroke of what I do with a person who's really ready and we're kind of in there and it's really palpable. Um, I have taken people back to those times, but it's come from their body, where we go, okay, where is that activated in your body? Oh, I feel this part of my body. The way that we get there often is to ask your body, what is the earliest memory or emotion of your body feeling that way? And a few people have said, I'm in the crib, I'm in utero. And it comes from their gnosis, and they're like, holy shit, I had no idea that this was all the way from then. My mom didn't want a girl, or whatever it was, whatever the story was. They kind of start making their own connections. It's not coming from me, but I'm just holding the space so that their subconscious can start bringing the puzzle pieces together. Right. It is a huge gift, and it can get, you know, um, I want to say, not strange for me because I work in the healing realm, but people can sometimes access memories that are not from this life also. I see myself and I'm in a cave, or I see myself and I'm in a theater and I don't know where I am. And it's like, okay, what else do you see? And just allow, and they will have sometimes a big story and it's like, what just happened? But their brain is remembering something that's still connected inside their cells. And it can sound super weird. It's not that weird. I think we only use a very small portion of our brain at the end of the day, right? So it's what we can actually remember and connect to, I think, is far greater than we were ever taught. And there's some reasons for that as well. But yeah. Mm, mm, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, this is a great question. So it's very gentle, and I have worked with a lot of people with extensive trauma. So I've had experiences with this, and it's really about what they can access, and it's not about me watching even. If I'm working with them live, I'll go into the next room. Or if we're on Zoom, I say, just take your camera off because it's not about me watching until you're ready and you want to. Right? This is about you touching and exploring what's there for you right now, and just know that I'm right here when you need me. But you don't need to have a set of eyes to make you more self-conscious. And if people are having a hard time with big body movement, it's always easier to start with gesture. Even it's like, well, what hand movements represent that? Because I think people can feel safer seated, moving hands, sometimes as a starting point. And it's like you just start with what you can access and what you can touch because maybe they don't want to do a whole big thing. And that's pretty normal, especially if you're not a person who does a lot of movement. Um, so it's always starting with what can you touch and what is accessible and using that as a little doorway in. Hmm. Wow. Yeah. Mm. Mm. What was that like for you to just have that? Did it shift anything, or what did you notice with that kind of like, oh, there was that part of me that's trying to protect myself by pushing? Um, yeah. Mm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of becoming aware of our patterns. And I want to say most people do this work or most people don't do this work because they're terrified of what they might find. When it's like on the other side of it is everything you ever wanted, is that sense of feeling safe and having peace. And these were things I did not know for a good portion of my life. And it's like when you're willing and ready, and there's no timeline of when that needs to happen. But if people could know that on the other side, you're okay, and it's better, and it gets better, when you have the right tools and when you have the right resources and support to really hold it. Yeah. Mm. 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 Back years ago or recently? Well, I can think more recently, I guess, because, and it's funny because I created actually a program called Sacred Rage that moves through the feminine archetypes to help women do that because of how important I've seen it be. But I went through something probably about a year ago where I had I feel like when you're on a journey, you're just like, there's just things that come. And I realized a really long standing pattern that I had taken on, and I had wells of rage that I had never expressed before, to the point where my husband was like taking out the punching bag, and I was just like going for it because it was just like I was so. And the funny thing is, I had been a person, and I still am in a lot of ways. I'm a very kind person. I'm someone who always want to make other people feel comfortable, and that's just kind of who I am, and I don't regret that. But anger was not my go-to. So it was a very like, and even in my household, my dad would be like, no anger, don't be angry. That's his thing, right? So it wasn't an encouraged thing. So for me to touch and own that was really big. And I ended up doing I had a performance actually locally, a whole bunch of students, and then I ended up performing this thing. I hired a flamenco teacher to work with to kind of get that sort of stamping, el duende kind of thing happening. And I had also taken flamenco before, but I used flamenco dance as a pathway of moving some of that intensity in my body. And yeah, I performed it. I actually called it lineage because it was a big piece of what I want to call like the parentified child. And so, yeah, and then anyway, there was just a whole bunch of different pieces to it that I just needed to kind of take my power back because it was like long enough that I was playing the nice girl. And it was all of those years of playing the nice girl where I was like, you better fucking believe this is done. Like, this is it. No more. Like, you do not do that anymore. And it was just, standing up for that little girl, again, like you were just saying, who was so shut down, who was so bullied, who was all of these other things, and never had anybody stand up for her. And it was like, I'm fucking standing up for her. So I think anytime we do that, and anytime we own a deep emotion, it's a power reclamation. Anytime you own a grief and you let it integrate, it brings to you another sense of being able to connect deeper to people, to have a kind of compassion for them that you couldn't have for yourself that now you have. And fear is an interesting one. Fear, I think, for people can be also very disconnecting in terms of anxiety, right? In the stories that we tell ourselves about we're all alone and everything's screwed up, which it's easy to look around in the world and say that. So, what happens when we meet that fear and we see that we're still safe and we see that we're still okay? Then what's possible? So it's a very beautiful journey, and it's one again that doesn't feel good all the time when you're in it. But ultimately, reclaiming it is reclaiming a part of yourself, your path. Um, and I believe it's like that, the Khalil Gibran poems who talk about, I can't remember the book, I read it like 25 years ago, but he talks about, it's the same cup that holds your emotions. It's like if you can only touch a certain amount of joy, that you can only touch a certain amount of sadness. Like when you can touch more of one thing, you can touch more of everything else. So when you deepen into the rage or the grief, guess what? You get back 10 times your aliveness, 10 times your joy, 10 times your pleasure. So it's being able to hold more overall that I think is such a great benefit in terms of like fully feeling human. Yeah. Mm. Right. Mm. Mm. Absolutely. And we underestimate how much energy it takes to hold back that fear all the time. It's exhausting. It's so exhausting. Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's such an important point. Mm. Ah, ah, mm, yeah. Yeah, well, it's interesting, yeah, to be physically not able to do something in the moment is a interesting conundrum with it. And I think about one of my mentors, what she would have me do with meeting anger in a certain way. She would have me go into the mind and the body and feel. She'd be like, "Well, just imagine you've got a baseball bat in your hand and you're breaking glass, and just feel yourself like smash the thing and just feel what it feels like to just grab something and pull it down off the wall." And she's like, "Just let yourself feel it." So I guess that would be, the imagination is a powerful tool, and we can bring those things to life for ourselves. Not that you will want to be, processing all those things with, your little one maybe, um, but yeah, you can move through so much just with your imagination and just by bringing yourself to the allowance of that. Like it's okay for me to do that, and giving yourself the permission to say it's okay for me to feel this and actually bring it to a full expression, even if it's on the internal plane. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Or, if you have a little bit of space, screaming into a pillow is good, or, taking something non-breakable and just whatever it is, having a little moment with it. And yeah, I definitely notice, and I don't know where you're at, and I don't need to ask in any regard, but perimenopause is starting to bring up, right, all those things. You get into a certain, become a little more unhinged, I notice, in terms of some of these deeper things, some of these deeper emotions that maybe didn't have an expression before. So, yeah, it's interesting. Mm. Yeah, I mean, very simply, you don't, I mean, I have a detailed process that I walk people through so that they can, understand the layers of it so that they get to the root. But in the moment, you don't have to, necessarily go through a process unless you want to. That can be very helpful. In the moment, you just need to be able to connect with what you feel and say, okay, I feel this. And it's like, well, and then the more that you can really, name it. Like, okay, like my stomach feels like it's on fire. Like, great. That's all you need. It's just something like that. Turn it over to the body. And when you turn it over the body, you have to be willing to not go on autopilot. Like, if you have a certain way that you always move, you have to be willing to say, like, if I'm going to get a little bit unhinged about this, like, what's really there? And just giving yourself permission to be with what is, knowing that it's not going to put you in any bad state, that you're going to feel better after, that you're going to affirm something. Or the thing that happens most of the time that's fascinating to me is that we can cognitively have a story about something. This happens all the time. It's fascinating. It happens to all my students too. We cognitively have an idea. This is what's happening in my body, right? I've got this anger, and we go to move it. And once we turn it over to the body and our mind really lets go and we're in there, we start feeling and sensing different things. And it happens all the time where you'll actually be brought to tears because your mind will start unraveling a piece of truth where you can see for the first time, you'll have a flash across your mind. It's connected to this moment where that validation didn't happen. It's connected to this, and it brings always up something that you're not cognitively thinking. So it's a beautiful process of just turning it over, like saying, like, body, what is it that we can do here? And being willing to follow the lead of how the body wants to move by being in touch with that feeling and following it till its full expression. Mm. Mhm. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Oh. Mm. Wow. Thank you so much for that. That was such a beautiful example of exactly what I was just saying. That was it. That's exactly what it was. So you just, that's such a beautiful share and of a memory of identifying a deeper truth and being able to hold yourself compassionately in the moment with what was there and what the body was really talking about. It was really talking about that. Yeah. 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 Hmm. Yeah, sure. Yeah. No, you can't predict a trigger. That is for sure. So I think, I mean, for me, I'm an introvert and an outrovert, meaning most of the time I have a hard time being around people as it is and in a social way. So uh, whatever you can do, it's like, I'm not feeling so great right now. I'm going to go outside and take a walk. Or I'm not, excuse me, I need to, go to the bathroom, whatever it is that you can just give yourself 5, 15 minutes and just place even your hand on your heart and just, what am I feeling? What does this remind me of? And if you're willing and honest about meeting it, you'll hear it pretty quickly. Like, oh, yeah, this is the way my brother used to make me feel, or this is the thing that, and it's like, okay, and it makes me feel actually really sad, and I'm going to just have compassion for myself around that sadness. And when you get accustomed to being in relationship with the body and knowing that the body is on your side, it's not something that we want to, harm, but it's a pathway and it's a wisdom keeper, and it holds it holds all our tender secrets, and it's our greatest guide. We just were never taught how to access these things. Yeah, this is a great question, and I think again it comes down to if you're doing body-based somatic work, even understanding, doing a little bit of a scan for, where they're feeling, what they can feel in the body. And it's like, if you can imagine what safety feels like, can you notice anywhere in your body that feels even like a little bit safe right now? And it's like, well, maybe behind my left knee feels okay. Or, I'm just making something up. But it's like, where can you feel right now that there is safety? And if they say, nowhere, nothing, and it's like, well, how is this conversation for you? Is this okay? And normally the conversation is happening is okay. Can you notice in this room that everything right now, nothing is happening in this room, that right now we're contained and gravity's got you, the earth has got you, I'm here. And can you sense that even? And it's just being able to name whatever it is that they can just connect to, like, well, maybe that's okay. And once they have the capacity for that's okay, it gives the nervous system a place to go just expand a little bit and that expansion. Mm. Absolutely. Mhm. Absolutely. That's a great, yeah, that's an absolute great thing, and I totally agree with you. And I think I was just also saying, like, yeah, if they don't want to do the body, if they can't, if they go completely out and they're like, I can't even do the foot on the floor, I would bring them to the other periphery. But we would definitely start with the body first, and yeah, hand on the arm, foot on the floor, anything that felt accessible, and starting with that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Mhm. Absolutely true. Yeah, it's so beautiful the way you just said that. It's funny, I never thought so much of an eating disorder in that way, but there was a revolt against the body happening for me at that time. It was very much like me against whatever this is. Like, I'm going to measure this and make it smaller every day. I'm going to win. Whatever, there was some determination around, yeah. Conflict. Mm-hmm. 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 Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I've never heard that before. And yeah, I think it's really brilliant to like you've investigated enough to go, that really works for me, and like I can really get how that makes sense. So yeah, I think the key, I guess, for any person is just what can they allow? What is the image? It's like my body is coming with me if it's feeling this disconnection. Um, yeah, it's an interesting way of naming it. That, mhm. Well, yeah. I mean, for most of us, for in terms of the body language work and the what I've done, and it's the subconscious mind. It's the part of you trying to keep you safe. It's the part of you that's gathered evidence your whole life around why this particular part of you is not safe and what you have to do to protect it, right? So, you know, we can't get rid of it, so we have to befriend it, just like you did. And that's exactly what the pathway is, and it looks a little different for everyone depending on what makes sense to you. But for some people, it's also just like, oh, thank you, body, for trying to keep me safe. Like, I can see that you're responding a certain way right now because I'm about to go do something that's uncomfortable. Like, thank you, body, for trying to keep me safe. And I'm going to do, we're doing this together. And I appreciate, yeah, exactly. Like taking it with you, just exactly like you mentioned. So you have a really beautiful way of describing um, how to navigate these. Yeah. Mm. Mm, absolutely. Absolutely. I completely resonate with that, and I want to share again. My work is deeply spiritual as well, so I'm sure you and I probably align, and maybe we have some differences in some ways. I'm sure, but what I've come to realize, especially over the last 6 years in doing body work and healing, and especially the embodied dance work, and taking it to new levels, because I feel like I'm just the channel for embodied dance. It's not coming from my mind; it's coming from a bigger part of whatever it is that I'm connected to, and what you just said is really driving things home, and it is bringing things very full circle, because in healing, what changed for me back in the late 90s and what has always brought me through a full healing process was bringing it to something bigger than Allison. Is saying, well, what am I really truly connected to that's with me, that's never left me? And if I actually come into that place in my body, mind, heart, and soul that knows that I am connected to source energy, to God, whatever word you use, Holy Mother, Father, doesn't matter. But when you realize that you are part of something that is inherently loved and made worthy by its existence, that piece clicking in is the sealing out of, I want to say, the ego noise, is bringing it back to source, bringing it back to something, again, as we were talking earlier, divine witness, bringing that into your heart. Yeah. A lot of times I'll just place my hand on my heart and I'll just be like, God, source, like, feel this with me. Like this, if I'm going through a big thing or I get some news and I can't handle it, I'm just like, feel this with me. I really believe that wherever we come from, or the creator, creatress, whatever word you have, is completely sentient and connected. And having that witness is, yeah, being witnessed is being healed for sure. Mm. Oh, yeah, sure. So thank you. It's been so lovely to connect and learn more about everything that you've shared as well. So I've really enjoyed this. And so the main offer that I have is the Embodied Dance Teacher Training, and this is for leaders, more or less, who don't know that they're leaders yet, or they have a big body of work to share, and they need the support to really own what it is that they're here to do. They need the support to build the somatic library of tools that can help serve them, and also to know how to go out in the world and make a life and a living from it. So that's the main thing that I work with people on. I also work with a few people one-on-one when I have space for that, in deep embodied dance processes. So people who are going through transitions or big periods of life that really want some somatic holding. And then other than that, I have a couple of different smaller programs that I offer, but I'm on Instagram, embodied.dance. My website is embodied-dance.com. And you can learn more about kind of who I am, what I do through those channels. Yeah. Sure. Hmm. Not even slightly. However, I also believe that to dance is inherently human. And while some people may not love it or like it, it's in everybody's wheelhouse in a human body. So there absolutely is no, you need no training. You need never have to been to a dance class of any kind to have an amazing experience with your body in in that facet. So yeah, it's a teacher. It's going to teach you. You're going to go on a journey with it, and you're going to come out the other side feeling in your power, in your skin, in your confidence. And that's, I feel like that's claiming our true birthright of why we're here. Yeah. Yeah. Likewise. Mm. Thank you. It's been, yeah, also. Ah, yeah. I mean, if you're listening and you're feeling hopeless and you're feeling sort of pinned down by something that has a stronger hold on you, I just want to let people know that there are other pathways, and you don't have to follow someone else's path to a T. It's really just around how can how can you find a path that makes sense to you, that honors your journey, and finding the support and things that you resonate with, um, that makes sense to you, because there is a way out. It's not a life sentence to have an eating disorder, and on the other side of it is a really wonderful way of being in the world, being in your body, and it doesn't happen overnight. But when you trust and you stay present, it ultimately gets better over time to the point where it's just not there anymore. Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much.